Hello, everybody. Welcome into 50 Toasts. 50 Toasts. Yay! 50 Toasts with Jason Hoffsetz. We got a banner. Look, we got a banner and we got this banner. You got your Twitter handles and then we go back to this. I'm learning stuff. We got the logo. I'm figuring it out. This appears to be going live to Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Are you Oh yeah, nice. All right, 50 Toast. We're doing it a little bit early tonight because there's a Tuesday night football game, which is the answer to what's the only good thing about the pandemic. Tuesday night football. Very excited. I'm going to go have a beer with my brother and hang a little bit on the porch. We socially distance outside where it's freezing, and we watch football together. It's our tradition. Couple of housekeeping things, just so you know, schedule-wise. We do this every Tuesday night here. Usually it's at 9 o'clock. We didn't want to be in conflict with the football game tonight, so we're going a little early. Next week, I'm dabbling with the possibility of doing a pilot of a different kind of thing in this space. If I can get it together, it's going to be called The 10 Spot, and it's going to feature 2 or 3 of my comedy buddies talking about 10 subjects in an hour. Let's see. Sunday, the best way to follow me and figure out what's going on, I sit and write jokes for like 14 hours. It's one of my favorite things. It's daunting and terrifying to stare at a blank page and know there have to be 20 good jokes on it by Tuesday morning. And my first playground is on Twitter. So follow me at All Pro Lines to catch all the jokes. And then, of course, I winnow those quite a lot. And they wind up on Instagram and Facebook as well. We're doing memes. All Pro Lines is great fun. Come do that. Monday at 7:30 p.m., Quick Snaps, the comedy football podcast with my boy Aaron Hodges. Yesterday we did a marathon. Usually we're super tight. We're not Rogan-ish. We try to, we're not indulgent. We keep it to like 40 minutes, 45, 50. We're pretty strict. Yesterday we did a marathon thing to celebrate the 2 football games. It ended up being 2.5 hours, which was ridiculous. But we had a couple of our favorite guests, Brian Miller and Glenn Grizzard. So anywhere you get podcasts, Quick Snaps the podcast, come check it out. And then, of course, 8:20 in the morning, I do Bob and Tom, which is a good segue to Jason Hoffsetz, who appears to be in the Bob and Tom studio right now. Is that true?
I'm in an ancillary room from the Bob and Tom studio, yes.
Which room is this?
I'm in my studio in the corner.
Oh, you're in yours?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wait, which end of the room are you in?
If I was in Dean's room from the studio, looking at Dean to the left.
Okay. I know exactly where you are. I got it now.
I'm on the far edge, the back corner.
Well, I should give you a proper intro. This is Jason Hoffsetz. He's, among other credits, he is a producer. He's been at the Bob and Tom Show forever, and he's been one of the core sort of behind-the-scenes characters of this giant, monstrously successful thing that we all know and love called the Bob and Tom Show. Among other highlights, he is a electric car enthusiast, to say the least. And those are the teasers. Those are the 2 things I want to talk to you about the most. So if you don't mind, can we start the beginning? How did you wind up in this building in the first place?
Things are different 25 years later. Because 25 years ago, being an intern was definitely the way to get in the building. And there were no rules back then. And I totally proved that because it was the summer of 95. I was out of college and married, and I just left. This is exactly what I did. I wrote something down. I wish I had the paper, honestly, because I wrote some probably lame, I really want to be in radio and it's my dream, something stupid. But I called the front desk. And all I said was, Tom Griswold's voicemail, please. And they sent it to me. They sent it, and hi, this is Tom, please leave a message. And so I read my little script and I hung up. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's cool. Well, I can't remember if it was a day or 2 later. A gal by the name of Meredith Dean, who I have such fond thankfulness for, and actually she just lives a couple miles north of me now. My kids and her kids went to school together. she calls me up, says, "Hey, this is Meredith. I got your message from Tom. Do you want to come in and kind of interview for an internship?" Sure. Yeah. I didn't necessarily ask for an internship, but I just said, "Hey, I want to get in." I didn't care if it was sales or whatever. So I came in, and they were, luckily for me at the time, they were desperate for interns. They didn't, it was the fall. I think it was the fall. I'm gonna say it was July or August. So like their summer interns had just left. So kids were going back to school, and they didn't have anybody for the fall season. And me and another gal who she was married to, actually, we were the interns for the year. It was the year Bob and Tom just started to syndicate in '95. So it was late that year.
Oh, that's even earlier than I thought it was. Okay.
And they were huge then even. And I did signings with them. I did events with them. I did stuff with Chick, just me and him going to some place, a spa or something, and he greets some people, all kinds of stuff like that. And they just, they got to like me a little bit and more than anything, trust me. So that ended. And then, actually I had real jobs from 96 to about 01. And I was in and out of the building. I was one of those people that Tom would call and say, "Hey, could you take Willie to school?" And I was probably more like Sam back then, actually. Right. And I would pick up Sam Griswold, take him to school, and go to my job or something, So I just kind of kept around. I didn't nose my way in, but I still, kept in contact, whatever. So then I got fired. I think it goes back to 01. My first child, Emma, was born March of 01. Emma. And April of 01, I got fired from my job. I worked in the food flavoring industry. It was a great job. Cool people, really enjoyed it. But the guy who fired me literally was in tears because he knew I just had a kid. He knew I was a good worker. They just had to clear like 40 heads. And I just was one of them.
Oh,
so that was April. And I remember we left town that weekend, and because I was like, "Oh, damn, anything to do." And when I got back, a random phone call from Tom. He was inviting me to a party. I won't say what the party was about, but this is all coming back to me now. And he said, "Call me if you can make this, because it's kind of a guest list thing." And I said, "Hey, yeah, I'd love to come to the party. And do you have a job? Because I just got fired." So that was April. So come the summer, I started doing some stuff on the side, and the internet in 01 was getting big. They just started the VIP service kind of thing for the show, and they needed some more audio for it. And although I wish I had one here, I didn't even think about it. Everything was on carts.
Right.
So
tell the civilians what that means.
Yeah, imagine an 8-track, is kind of what I wish we haven't used them in years. That's why I'm looking around like one's going to pop up here.
There's going to be a wall of them in there.
I know where there's some in a room, but so basically it was all that. And they basically hired me. They put me on full time in January of 02. I technically was full time. And they, Tom just said, "Hey, I want to digitize these." Basically, for example, Haywood Banks, a ton of carts. And I would come in every few days and we look at the carts, and Tom would say, "Hey, these are the best songs. Can you get a better version of this?" And I would go find the DAT tape.
Oh.
And then I would go and start editing it and put it on a CD. And then those eventually were put into our digital system in the whole building.
Right.
So I basically digitized the entire Bob and Tom catalog in a way. I mean, we were doing CDs at that time.
Right.
But there was just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of carts that I just went through for 3 years. And that's one of those things, almost, it was kind of like in the world of comedy, so you can relate. It was kind of like doing MC. you kind of have to figure out how to do
Right.
stuff, and I could make mistakes over in another building, and then I would bring it to here. And I worked in a studio, so Alan Johnson was there, and he kind of made me think from the studio side, and I learned some studio techniques and stuff. And it was basically, you got to get your 10,000 hours in, as they say, Malcolm Gladwell. And it was 3, I think it was a good 2002, 3, and 4. Yeah, because we moved here in 2005. So I had 3 years just to figure it out, and kind of the rest is history, I guess.
That's great. Now, again, just to paint the picture, because you and I have been in and around radio for a long time, radio has changed so much. Now in the current radio universe, you can go, there's programs where you can have a touch screen and move this ad into here and this song here, and we're going to play this interview, and you can actually put it all together, and you can voice track, you can record the ins and outs, and you can build a show that's 4 hours long in a much shorter amount of time, and then hit play on the whole damn machine. In the old days, there was a guy and there was a wall of carts. Like you said, they're sort of like 8 tracks, and you would go, oh, we're going to talk about this, we're going to do the weather, and then we're going to grab this and play the Haywood song. It was a very different universe. So you helped to get them into the modern technical world.
Yeah, and it was more for Tom's sake. The cool thing too about it, and actually we just revisited this, I kind of designed in my head what I wanted it to be, but we kind of made a search engine of our bits based on topics and or titles or subjects or
that's
seasons.
Very handy.
So we could go in and go, what were all the football bits, and Tom could click it and he could find it and play it on the air.
Oh, it's great. That's handy.
Yeah, it's not used as much as it was, but I would say probably for a good almost 8 to 10 years, he loved that thing.
Right. Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Now you are fast forward to now. Isn't there another wave of grabbing things and organizing them and sort of grabbing some of the archival stuff and putting it back out in the world? Tell me about that.
You mean like older bits or stuff, or?
Yeah, more of the older things are now available on the app or the VIP or something. Help me know what's going on.
Yeah, we have a system. I mean, it's basically a database that's. I'm pointing over here. I can't see how I'm pointing here, but it's called the Next Gen system. And basically, we don't make CDs anymore. Like if you had a good thing today, hey, Kostaki did that one joke about blah blah blah. I want it again. I would edit it and lay it into the system digitally, and Tom would be able to play it on his system. And it's all just clicking. So all of our stuff has always kind of been in there, or we've accumulated since probably 2004, I think is when this system went in. And it's always been there. We had a little hiccup there a few years back, but they had to do some sort of, I don't know, reconciliation of stuff, but our stuff has always been there. It's just a matter of whether we free it up to put it into 24/7, like the app,
right?
Kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So if something happens, like whatever, if I died tomorrow, would you be able to pull up some of the great Kostaki bits?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
They're in the catalog, and you go, oh yeah, like I remember the thing, and they play a few extra ones that day or whatever.
I actually have something queued up here. I don't know if we can hear it, but this is from today's show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hopefully it's loud enough. And not all your jokes land perfectly.
No, they do.
But see if you can hear that.
Josh Gordon has had more rehab than Alex Smith's leg. There you go.
More truth really than comedy.
Right. Yeah, right.
You really had a lot of rehab done.
Why you got to play the joke that doesn't work?
It was the first one I found. I saw it because usually visually I can see when something's funny because there's this chatter, laugh,
Oh, right.
In the waveforms. And I just happened to see that one right before we popped on here. I'm like, I'll see what that one is. I'm like, oh, that was kind of funny. I hope they could hear that.
That's so funny. You're a great editor. I should compliment you with this series of thoughts. when a handful of times I've needed a sample to send to other radio stations, and I call you and go, "Hey, man, I did whatever it was." And sometimes it ends up being like a 17-minute thing. I'm like, "Can you help me distill that down to 90 seconds of funny somehow?" You're great at that. And people who may or may not know this, I put out a 3-disc set of Econo monologues from back in the day, and you were sort of the I don't even know what your title would be. There you go. Available anywhere you get your comedy stuff, iTunes.
That's some content right there. 3
3
CDs worth. Yeah.
3 discs. They're like 70-something minutes each. That was a lot of jokes. Oh my goodness.
Bunch of tracks on there.
And say, for instance, the joke that you just played, you would go through and pull that out for this purpose. You were great, man. We would talk, and I would go, "Hey, time codes, and if 509, I say something that they didn't hear the first part of it, and then I had to stammer." You go in there and slice it out, and you would never know it was there. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and that just comes from years of doing it. But what I think I'm really good at is more, and it's easy. It's what do they like? What do they almost? I don't care if it doesn't really matter if I think it's funny, but if they react to it really well and they get a kick out of something,
right?
That's why I'm like, oh, that's a good one. That's how when I edit a best of or whatever. It's if they're having a good time, man, that's what I replay.
Right. But for years, if I'm right, you've been the guy who, and this is faded now, but you were the guy who put together the albums that would be sold every December, that they sold like crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of wild to think that. I mean, it's one of those things as a kid, you grew up listening and buying albums, and your friends go, "Oh, I love that album." And then probably about, I keep, saying years, but I kind of remember certain years real vividly. 03 or 04, I just started doing all the albums, partly because I was over at the Shack, and I had Tom and I were working on an album, Gone Wild or something like that. And I was kind of like, hey, we had these cards that we'd put the things on and we kind of organize them. And I said, what about putting these two? They kind of make sense together, and the flow and da-da-da. And he goes, that's really good. And eventually I did all the albums for about 10 years, which is kind of just crazy to think that I still kind of pinch myself a bit thinking I'm the one that put those together. I mean, I have a wad of them back there.
They were huge. Those sold like crazy.
Yep. And then, as Tom put it, then you looked at the big long line at Apple, and they digitized everything basically, music wise, and people stopped buying CDs.
That's right. But you were essentially the creative director. Would that be?
No. I mean, I would basically say these are what's probably would work. Tom would usually at the certain time of year, late summer, would start doing some big numbers at the Shack. Bob would bring a song or two. And just from the past year, I kind of know, that Kostaki bit or that Greg Hahn piece was really good. And I would go and revisit it and really kind of give it make sure it has a good intro. Cut a joke that I rarely do I cut stuff, but if there's something that just doesn't fade or just something doesn't hit, fade it into, there's some magic behind it.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. You're really good. You're being modest, but it's something that most people aren't good at doing, because you've got a great ear for comedy and you understand the flow and the technical aspects of going in and doing the editing. I mean, I used to kid with you about it when we were working on the Econo monologue discs. I was like, man, I wish I could do this with my regular life, is sit with you, knock it around, and then carve out the low spots and just cram it tighter. It was awesome. It was great because, I would call and do whatever it was, 12 minutes, and then we would turn it into 3 minutes and 47 seconds of tight magic. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it too is with you, where you're really easy because there'd be a breath and a new joke. So if that joke didn't hit, I'll take that one out and
Oh, yeah.
bring the beginning of the one that does hit. A lot
Right.
of times it's pretty easy, and with them, I know their cadence and how Tom breathes, and I can always I can find a way to make it sound natural.
That's funny. I know how
Yeah.
Tom breathes. I know how to work
I
with that.
do.
I know.
It's like I can see a little waveform, and I go, that's a Tom breath.
That's,
You know,
wow,
or
that's-
even just their talking, I know whose is whose generally.
Well, you said sort of I'm easy because I take a breath and do another joke. What's a thing that's hard to edit? Somebody who like powers through fast stories.
Music is hard to edit because
Okay, of course.
you have singing and a strumming of a guitar. Funny little insight. I think it was Haywood. Speaking of Haywood, what are you drinking, by the way? I didn't open my.
It's one of my favorite beers, Allagash White.
Well, I'm not really a drinker ever.
Yeah.
So I got a Wisconsin maple root beer. I've never tried it.
Fancy bottle.
They always look like they're fancy. They try to make it look crafty or whatever. So I always like to try different root beers just because I don't drink alcohol.
Yeah. All right.
So let's see what this one's like. Not really getting the maple. I'll be honest with you. It's made with Wisconsin pure maple syrup, and I'm like, it's one of those guys comes in and puts a drop of maple in there.
Yeah, when I branded this thing, it was 50 lunches was the thing I was doing for a few years on and off, and then I started it here, and my friend goes, "Yeah, but you can't eat on screen. It looks terrible." So we changed it to 50 toasts. Little did I know that 70% of my guests would be non-drinkers, so it's not a very good branding choice. Most of them are comics who are grown-ups like me and went through a phase where they used to drink too much and now they don't drink at all. And we got the full range. So it's almost like the Seinfeld thing when they started the sitcom. The big part of the show was Jerry doing little pieces of stand-up, and then they're like, okay, we got the gist, and then they just stop doing it.
Yeah. We got to get to these stories. We have so many stories to get to.
That's right. Yeah, we skipped that part.
Yeah,
so cheers, everybody.
Right.
Enjoy it along, and whatever you drink, however you drink.
Yeah. So I was saying the Haywood editing thing, tough to edit. I think it was the Haywood Big Butter Jesus song, I want to say.
Hit. Yeah.
Tom eventually put drums and some bass or something underneath of it. But the original, because Tom had him do it 2 or 3 times. He might have even done it a partial time to get a line just right. And I think that piece is actually from 3 different performances.
Wow, that's some real artistry
that I kind of had to put together.
Yeah.
And the thing about these guys, and they're all, and Haywood's not the only one. Pat's the same way. They rarely do the same song twice.
Oh, right.
Just the same cadence, timing, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, that's
tempo,
tricky.
I should say. So, luckily it was the same day, so that was. I felt like it was okay.
Right.
It wasn't too bad. So,
right.
That's kind of a rarity to have something have 3 versions mashed into one, but yeah.
Oh, we get some comments coming in. Hey, if you guys have questions for Jason, type them in. That's part of this new beautiful forum. We can mess around with you guys a little bit too. All right. Let me ask you this. I love this is one of my favorite questions to ask guys who are in that building or have been in that building. What kind of guests do you love the most, and what kind of guests do you go, oh? I mean, you don't have to say names, but like, are there archetypes that are a pleasure for you to deal with and maybe not so much?
Well, I think there's probably a lot of answers to that. Certain comedians you love seeing, you included, but a Greg Hahn, a Greg Warren, when Josh, before he was on the show and he was just a comedian, I always enjoyed, seeing him because I'd have lunch with him. So those are friendship based, kind of once you become friends. I tell you, I will say this: musical guests are always fun. You never know what you're going to get when it comes to musical guests. But I tell you what, Here Come the Mummies.
Oh yeah.
The first time they were on, I came in the building, and I usually would come in, 8 or 9-ish, something like that, and just do my own thing. They don't need me in the show, while it's going on much ever. And I've never felt energy in a building like I did the first time Here Come the Mummies. There was just, and it was both from them, but also from the show's reaction. There was just this incredible fun energy that I've never experienced anywhere else before.
Oh wow, strong words.
It was in the air. You could feel it, you could taste it, you could smell it. I mean, it was all the senses. I'm just saying, even at a commercial break, there was just this buzz in the building because they were so new and fun and different. And we didn't really know much about them.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, that was part of that because they knew a little bit and were excited to have them, or it was they just fit so well?
I think they just knocked them out of their socks with their fun songs. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So then there's also the super big celebrities. Mike Tyson came in, Peyton came in a handful of times.
Right.
Like Jeff Daniels was really cool. That's a fun energy too, but also you never know what you're going to get. We've been around a while, and you never know what kind of, celebrities can be, David Lee Roth, Charles Barkley, those guys come to mind. Those are fun. As far as usually the answer is comedians who try too hard. Those are the ones, and I could give some examples, but I won't. But they just try too hard. I mean, to quote one of them, I'm going to get on one of those albums. I'm going to go in there and do something. I'm going to get on one of those albums. Yeah. And I was like, I've seen your stuff. You're not getting on an album.
You talking about Bob Zaney?
I did one of his albums too, by the way, baby. I think I did a best of Bob Zaney right there, if you can see that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
I haven't seen Bob in a while. That's funny. Yeah.
I called him this weekend. I haven't talked
to him. Did you really? Good.
Yeah.
Great.
I called him to let him know that the door was cracked to send football jokes over to all pro lines. Yeah. I called a few guys this week. It's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, we got some questions. Let's see here. Oh, Grace is on here. Hey, Grace. Grace Yinger said, "Howdy, boys. Did the notarization work for you?" Is that a question for
yes,
you?
yes, it did.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And I can we'll talk about that when we get to EV stuff.
Okay. Good. Yeah, my mom's already asked. My mom's on here asking that question. Talk about the electric cars already.
That's funny.
Andreas is looking forward to seeing the Cowboys get crushed. Love that.
I don't even know what is the game tonight. I forget. Cowboys and Baltimore? It's Baltimore, I think.
That's right. It's Ravens.
Yeah, they'll probably get crushed.
Yeah, they're going to get crushed. Although the Ravens have had some issues. They're not at peak health.
Yeah, true. I was thinking before the call here, I bet I'm a unique person in your life. I've stayed because you've lived in New York City and LA in the past, 5 years?
Yeah, that's right. And you've been to both of those homes.
Without you there.
Without me there. That's right.
Yeah, right? How silly is that?
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. You came as you brought the whole gang at times that we weren't there. Like, this is where the key is, and figure this out. And talk to the doorman. We did the whole thing. Gotcha.
Yeah, middle of July was always. You always had something else going on. I know one was a cruise, and maybe the second one might have been a cruise too when I was in LA.
Yeah. Well, we sometimes do Greece in the summer. That's kind of when you're traveling usually. Yeah, that's right.
We have our week off in July.
That's a good time to visit Kostaki if you don't want them around. Zach asks, what's it like working with Dean?
Dean, I always look at Dean as the big brother I never had. He's a mentor. He's, talking about editing. I mean, I do some really good stuff with basic parameters. Dean is on a whole nother level, man. You know, the stuff when he takes a big long sentence, or I mean even a whole conversation, and pares it down and makes people say stuff that they didn't say. That's Dean, man. Dean is so good. And even production of bits, which we don't do bits as much anymore, but
Right.
I've produced a few bits in the past, but whenever I do, it's how did Dean, I've done a few bits that were similar in scope of others. And I'm like, how did Dean do his? Okay, that's what I'll do. Oh, that's what I'll do. And he could just be so dang funny. I just feel like he doesn't even try. He doesn't have to try. He just,
Right.
yeah, he's just the best. And he's literally just in the wall behind me. And the bummer part is a lot of times when I'm dealing with Dean, it's a lot of details and the part of the job that people don't see or really appreciate of, we take care of a lot of nuts and bolts I always say on this side of the glass.
It's so much work.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But like we're taking care of a lot of little things that just need to, so everything operates properly.
Right. That's right.
But no, Dean's the best. I just, like I say, he's like a big brother to me.
That's
whether
cool.
he wants to be or not,
or whether he sees it that way or not.
Right.
Mike Carey says, "Where's Mike Armstrong been?" That's a funny question.
I have no idea. We haven't had comedians in here at all, and even the ones we have on Zoom calls or whatever, even that's been really limited. And partly, and if I can blame someone for that, it's Josh. We have a full-time comedian on the show all the time, so it's almost like he scratches that itch of needing a comedian to sit in with stuff and have that comedian's point of view. So it's kind of a weird dynamic, both when Josh came on and the fact that we shut the building down and we don't have anybody come in.
Yeah, that's right. Jason asked, do you have any favorite Tim Wilson story?
Man, I wish I could relive a night, because I did. I would go when the Bob and Tom comedy tour was really kind of in its early phase, I would say, and Donnie Baker was on those. I would just say, hey, I'm going to go with the gang. A lot of times it was with Ron, and I think actually this time I'm speaking of, I think it was a specific. I went with Ron up to Iowa, and I think Paul and Storm and Tim Wilson were on those shows, which is kind of and I think there was somebody else. Yeah. And we just, I mean, I didn't say a word, I'm sure. Sitting at dinner, with Tim Wilson, I just let him go. But you know what? I didn't really interact with him that much. Although there is a podcast on Chicks. I think when we did Off the Air, we did do a podcast with him before Tim passed, and it's been almost 4 or 5. I think Tim passed in 2016, so I think it'll be no. Yeah, 2016. So it'll be February of 2016. So it'll be almost 5 years, if you can believe that. So, so I didn't have a whole lot of. He was always, I would say hi, a little bit of this and that, but when you just would say hi to him and look him in the eye, he just became the sweetest person. He had this sweet little Southern smile. He almost turned up his Georgia accent a little bit for you.
Right.
I think the thing I loved about him most was his appreciation for the show. He was famously quoted as saying, going on the Bob and Tom show will do more for a comedy career, specifically, and he says, I think he might have said even specifically mine, more than going on late night TV.
Right. Yeah.
He might have specifically said Leno or something at the time, whoever was at the time.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Especially, and
because
he wasn't crapping on them. Yeah.
You could do it over and over and over. And with radio, you build this sort of real connective tissue with people in a way that it's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. And you're not on for 6 minutes.
Right.
you're on for a 10-minute segment and then maybe a 15-minute segment. If they love you, oh my gosh, I can bring out more stuff. And all of a sudden something knocks them over the head and great reaction. And then Tom's playing that song for the next 3 months.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It's hard
There's
to
that
measure
kind of
power.
relation. Yeah, it's hard to measure. And on that point, something I always like to say is, versus late night. And I love Letterman growing up and whatever, and Carson and whatever. But those guys they're on for an hour and they have a crap ton of writers and production people and
That's right.
These guys 4 hours every day with no net, really.
That's really amazing.
There's a little bit of writing some things and running some ideas behind the scenes, but man, Tom, he works his ass off, man. I mean, to do that for 4 hours. I don't know if you remember when after Bob was he kind of was doing his part-time thing and then he did leave. I can't remember when this was, but you came in and we're we had comedian guest hosts for the whole show.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I was running the board in there and it was maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock. And you were like, we got another hour and a half of this, I mean, it's exhausting.
It's fun, but it's very taxing. It drains
mentally,
your spirit because you have to be so focused for so long in a row.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a skill set that doesn't speak to my strengths. I mean, I'm pretty good at sitting and writing and rewriting and building a tiny little thing and then come in, do it and leave. Yeah. To sit there and to be good at improv and riff off something else that somebody else said and to be hyper focused and be alive and in the moment for that long is A, it's not what I do best, and B, it's hard for anybody to do well. Mm-hmm. It's hard.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Lots of credit to those guys for sure. Yeah. All right, we got another question. Oh, I was going to say, Tim Wilson was kind of a big deal in my life. I had the whole arc with Tim. I was an open micer when he was the big shot headliner in Atlanta at the time. And I asked him advice. I was like a nervous open micer. And I said, do you have any advice for someone young like me who's kind of getting into comedy? He goes, well, you better enjoy that drive to Chattanooga because that's what comedy is. And I thought about that for the next 30 years. And I have to say, I still think of that sometimes when I go on the road. I'm like, you get to enjoy the ride to Chattanooga because that's what it is. It is. It's not just the joke telling. There's so much of this other parts of it about being a comic and I love it. There's a certain nomadic beauty to it. And I love it. And I think of Tim's answer to this day. It's so funny. Here's my favorite Tim Wilson moment. I was a brand new headliner, like barely qualified to headline. And Tim was this old, like murderous comic from the beginning of time. And we ended up headlining at the opposite clubs in the same town. Oh. We were both doing Dayton. So I go in to do radio. I do whatever, 5-8 minutes. They say thank you. And I leave. And Tim Wilson is coming in as I'm leaving. And I know him a little bit. And I'm like, hey, Tim, and we talk shop sort of in the doorway. And he goes in to do radio. Later that day, I found out that Tim was on for the next 5 hours. They literally loved him so much they didn't let him leave, and he's there playing songs and talking to him. And literally the morning show is over, and they leave, and the next guy kept him in, and he's just sitting in there. Like, that's who I'm competing with to sell tickets? I have no chance. He was a monster. I think about him a lot. We have pictures around here of him. And he was definitely taken from us way too soon, man. Oh man, you look at some of those bits that they're just classic and beautiful. And he's also the example, because sometimes I get pushback about doing jokes that are a little bit edgy or a little bit political or have a little bit of an angle. I'm like, I disagreed with Tim Wilson about almost everything, and I couldn't wait to see what he was going to say next. Like, why do you care what a person's? I mean, can't you separate that out a little in your brain? George Carlin made me wince sometimes. I didn't like everything he had to say, but I was there for it. I want to hear the rest of it,
Right. Yeah, I loved him. He was as special as they get, really. There's a poster of him. A lot of times PJ, our art guy, would do, if someone big came in and put his face and some neat art and, his name and title and stuff. And he signed it, and I think it's signed, "Thanks for always treating me like Elvis."
Ah, that's nice. Yeah, that's a perfect.
He was definitely our Elvis, for what we do.
Cool. I have a very distinct memory of hanging with him backstage at one of the Bob and Tom tour shows in Salt Lake City, and it's still to this day one of my favorite venues. It's like this big, beautiful house that has some theater qualities, but it also still felt like a bar. Like it had a bar in the back of each tier, and it had this sort of earthy, cool quality. And there was a beautiful green room. It was gritty and dark. And Tim and I were back there kind of hanging out, and one of the other acts was on, and we were kind of quietly talking shop. And then we would kind of listen to the jokes kind of ebb and flow and come out. And we were just like, there was a camaraderie about being comics that was, it's one of my favorite things about stand-up, and to get to have that with a guy that was the big shot when I was a child, when I was a comedy embryo, for us to be on the same show and to sort of hang and have the same sort of problems and worries and thoughts about stand-up. It was cool. I love that guy. Here's a question from Zach. Do you have a moment or anything that you remember where you knew Josh was going to work out on the show? That's a good question.
Yeah, I do, in a way. He was coming on and guest hosting a little more, and I'm going to get the exact timing off. Like it was, he came on maybe full time in like August of that year, which was like almost a little over 4 years ago. And so call it July. He was coming in, maybe a couple days in a row or something. And he was doing this, he was basically making fun of Tom, doing his voice. The chick, he kind of was playing off a chick's role doing that. But, yes, I know I can't do anything without, he would just mock, he was doing, and they were eating it up. I mean, eating it up. Tom was eating it up. Chick was eating it up. Christy wasn't back on actually yet. But I kind of, there's that sort of, that moment, that the head nod going, this seems to be, and I wasn't aware obviously of any of the conversations of, hey, we're going to bring him on full time. But it was definitely I was already, they probably already were considering him, but I probably found out too late. But when I figured it out too late, I'm like, yeah, maybe he'll be on the show a lot or all the time. Right. And it's been absolutely wonderful. I did I produced his podcast today, and, I get to hear him on the show 5 days a week. And yeah, he's not only a good friend, he's a great part of the show.
He's a great guy, and I'm glad that I got to know him as a comic too beforehand. And he's a great addition to the show. It's a really nice fit. I'm glad that it all's clicking, man. It's cool.
Yeah.
What's the name of the podcast? Let's give that a plug.
That Josh Arnold podcast.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. And then tomorrow I'll record the Bits and Pieces podcast, which is me kind of taking care of the nitty gritty, and then Willie Griswold host along with Jessica Alsman and Jess Hooker. And I play some old Bob and Tom bits, there's usually a theme. And then we kind of talk about them, have funny stories, remember this, remember that, and laugh a bit and play another one.
Oh, that's great. I haven't heard that yet. I'll have to find that myself. I'd like to hear that.
We just did one it was all Chick McGee last week.
Okay, cool.
His voice, whether it be the announcer or playing a comedic role on a bit, he's on, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. So
right.
Yeah, we had a good time with him. And actually we played his, what we believe to be his very first bit that he wrote and performed. It was just live on the air. It was like he read a letter from a listener, but he made it all up. It was pretty good. Pretty good.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've made them wait long enough, Jason.
Your mom, you mean?
Pitch us on electric cars, because when I moved to LA, you gave me a pretty strong push, and I wish my life was a little bit different. I would have taken you up on it, and I didn't, and I still sometimes regret it. So tell us about electric cars.
Well, first of all, I've been driving electric vehicle over 6 years now. I'm on my third lease, different cars. And to Grace's question earlier, this is where people would go, oh, that Jason seems like a pretty normal, cool dude. And this is where you'll change your mind. It's in September. Me and a buddy, he flew with me, one of my childhood best friends, flew to Seattle. I leased a car there. This was all prearranged, and drove it all the way back to Indiana.
Because what?
An electric vehicle. It was the best deal. The best person to me. Also buying a car. I'm not buying from a sleazeball. I'm just not going to do it. This guy was really great. So Grace actually had something to do with the notary on what I needed to be done. So because of the, we had to FedEx some documents. So, we took, 4 or 5 days, went through Yellowstone and had a great time. So I say that to say, yes, I'm very much into electric vehicles, so much so that I'll travel to the state of Washington, 2,200 miles away and drive that car back.
And make an elaborate plan about stopping, charging, and there's a lot you have to kind of sort out, right? Yeah,
and it's a Kia Niro EV. Whereas if you had a Tesla, which that's the one everyone knows about, you just type it in and it tells you where to go. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of work to make it happen, but it worked. So EVs, there's plug-in hybrids that have a gas and a battery, like a Chevy Volt and some other things. I'm all EV. I'm just battery. There's nowhere to put gas because there's not a gas tank to put any gas in. So
right. Totally different.
I always like to say you'll fall into one of 3 triangles, if you will. A pie graph is called put in 3. One is your super duper environmental.
Right.
You're like, okay, there's exhaust coming out of this car every time I turn it on. It's disgusting. I think we can all agree it's disgusting. And so you're like, I'm environmental. I just can't take it anymore. I do that. Okay. And for those of you who go, well, there's gas, there's coal. Yes, there is some coal. It's only like less than 20%. Renewable energy is going up every day. I have 1,000 solar panels by my house, kind of thing. Not at my house, but at just like a half a mile away. So the grid is getting greener every day.
Yeah.
So environmental is your first third. The second third is cost of operating it. Gas. Let's see. How do I put that? I got to kind of bring it down a little bit. Let's say $1. I like to go $1 of gas. Okay. Is going to get you like 8 miles.
Love this.
Okay. 8 to 10 miles. Let's call it 10 miles because gas has kind of gone down. So around 10 miles, a dollar of gas will get you. $1 of electricity will get you about 35 to 40 miles.
Wow.
So it's 3 to 4 times cheaper just to operate day to day. Okay?
Right.
You have your conveniences of not having to go to the gas station. And the big one to me is I haven't had my personal car. I've had my family's cars, but oil change, zero maintenance other than rotate your tires a little, make sure you got windshield wiper fluid.
Yeah, that's interesting. You don't think of that.
That's
right.
it. And there's a drastic amount of fewer components that don't break down in an electric car. I mean, just a motor,
Right.
There's a few little things happening, but not like a typical car with, you got to lube this up. You got ignition coils and, just all kinds of crap that breaks eventually. So there's the cost of ownership. And the cost side by side is basically the same now, as far as, EVs are more expensive and they used to be for sure, but they've come down. Plus there's tax credits, that kind of thing.
Right.
The third one is you get in one, as they say, butts and seats, and you drive it. And you're like, this is amazing. I don't care it's electric. I don't care that it's cleaner for the environment. This is an awesome experience. And that's the one that will probably get most people into an electric vehicle. Me personally, I'm kind of all 3, frankly. All three of them kind of make sense for how I feel about them.
Right.
I'm a dollars and cents guy. I'm a numbers guy. I do care about the environment. I mean, I have a degree in environmental science, which, like, why am I in radio? Makes no sense to me. So, but I also love the feel of, you push that accelerator and you go, there's not a lull to it. You kind of become one with the car.
That's great.
So yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. It's one of those things you got to be like a Tom Griswold would not be the best person for an EV because, I forgot to plug it in, kind of thing. So if you're a little bit of an absent-minded professor type, maybe not the best, but I feel like 80% of the population could do an EV easily.
So yes, I think that's right. I think we've come a long way, and we're more. It's easier to pull off socially. Like there's places where you can go, and you understand the thing, and the engines are better, and the cars. I feel like in the old days, the driving experience was somewhat disappointing, and I think maybe that's still in my head, even though that kind of car has long been improved upon.
Yeah. Yeah, like the Chevy EV1, from back in late 90s might be the first one you probably saw or heard of. And that was a very capable car, but they're just so much better now. Tesla has set the standard. Everyone's like, I have to, get to their standard. I have to be an efficient car, has to go, the performance has to be a little better, those kind of things.
Yeah, that's great, man. We ended up being a one-car family, and I did have the flexibility to ended up and driving across America with the whole family.
Yeah.
And I also had the very weird circumstance of not having a parking space in a traditional way.
Yeah.
Or I probably would have done it. And I definitely have in mind, like, whatever this car is done, the next one is going to be electric. Yeah,
the big key to people think, could I do it? Well, the best part, the most important part is, do you have a garage or a driveway where you could put a charger in? Because, I mean, the average person, 99 out of 100 charges is going to be at home. You just charge, go to work, go get groceries, pick up the kids, come back, You go to bed, you charge it. And even the car I have now, I only charge it about every 4 or 5 days. Just because it's got a much bigger battery. My previous cars had way smaller batteries, so I charged them every night. But it was a habit I had.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I'm impressed that you not only are you doing it and you're excited about it, you're kind of like aggressively spreading the word. I think that's awesome. I'm impressed.
I don't know how aggressive I am, but
you're not aggressive by nature, but within your range, you kind of like, hey, I'll call the dealership and I'll help you, and we'll sit down and run the number. You're helpful.
I have some friends that have been kind of like, that's interesting. And I got a call from my buddy Scott. I'll give a little shout out to Scott, who called me and said, hey, thinking about doing it. I'm thinking about doing it before the end of the year. Should I? Go, yes, this is the perfect car for you. It's going to work out. I'll come over to your house and see where maybe the best place to put a charger. So I have that friend. And then I have another friend who's shopping for a used Tesla, I believe.
All right.
So I'm converting some people. Slowly but surely. Eventually, it won't have anything to do with me. It'll just start to happen in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think so too. That's great, man. Well, thanks for being on the vanguard of that. If anybody's watching that wants to talk to you, how do they find you?
Yeah, on my Twitter, and I don't tweet much, but don't make that think that I'm not on Twitter. You can DM me. My DMs are open at Jason Hoffey. That's sort of Chick's doing. The Hoffey part there. Back when we were doing his podcast, I started it that way. So I have helped people before on answering questions. I've even helped a little gal, this lady, she's in her 60s. Her name's Rita. We have an Indiana EV club I go to about once a month. And she had a Chevy Bolt with a B.
Am I not supposed to make an erectile dysfunction joke?
No.
Okay.
Chevy Bolt.
Good.
And she wanted to go to from Indy to Baltimore, and she was really skittish about going. And she already has an EV. And I talked her through getting there. You know, you're going to find that these are the charging spots, and and once you do it, you're like, why haven't we been doing this for 50 years?
Right. That's right.
Is what you eventually realize.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
That's great,
exhaust on a car is terrible. It just, especially trucks. And that's another thing about Tesla. And there are other companies who make semis that are fully electric.
Wow.
So it's coming whether you want it or not. I promise you.
That's right.
At this point. Yeah.
Well, kudos, man. It's great to talk to you, Jason.
Yeah, man. I love you, man. You're just, it's fun getting to know people here. And there's a thing you eventually realize with comedians, they're all kind of screwed up and kind of weird, but you and Greg Warren were the least screwed up ones I met, and I really became close to the two of you, and then eventually Josh, as Josh came around. So I've always appreciated our friendship for sure, man.
That's nice. That's a very hilarious backhanded compliment. I'll take it. Yeah, you've been great. You were one of those guys I look forward to going and having lunch with, and you invited me to a Purdue game one time. We sat there in the stands, had a great time.
Yeah.
Hanging out at places here and there around Indy. It's been great.
You actually came to my 40th birthday party. Do you remember that? Just hanging out at home.
Yes.
And we just had food and cake. It was nothing fancy.
That's right. Yeah. You've had me to the house for dinner and with the kids, and you're the most like kind, nerdy, richly soulful Midwesterner in the history of the universe.
I was thinking about Georgians too. Georgians have that Southern, definitely that Southern thing, but there's something about Georgians that also have some Midwestern sensibilities.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that fair?
I think that's fair. I think that's why I fit on the show. The show is so very Midwestern, right? And that's why I don't fit on any of the Northeast radio shows. I wouldn't fit on Stern or those guys that go on. They bust each other's balls and they've got this Boston accent and they're harsh and mean. I don't really fit there. I can pull it off, but that's not right. Right.
Yeah. That's why I always thought Bob and Tom fans always liked you, because you had that sort of Midwestern.
That's right.
Thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. It's great, man. Good to talk to you. If you want to buy an electric car, go look up Jason. I put his Twitter handle on the screen here. It's at Jason Hoffy. Plug the podcast again.
Yeah, Bits and Pieces podcast. You could look under Bits and Pieces, or you can look up Bob and Tom on Spotify, Apple. It should be in all of them. Josh has a great one too. It's just Josh. It's called That Josh Arnold Podcast. And he just talks about a word of the week. He talks something he likes. He answers some questions, things to work on. It's just kind of his last two have been like an hour long. It's kind of like a one-man show sort of thing of just him talking. And, but man, as I'm sitting there producing him, he has me every minute. I'm sitting there listening to him and going, man, this is just, it's a great, it's fun. And Josh is such a good personality, and he's so good at it.
That's a good pitch. And I love Josh. If you missed the 50 toasts, I did one of these with Josh, and it's one of my favorite ones. He's really like a menschy, great guy to talk to. He's affable and generous. You can get that at the YouTube channel. There's about 15 of these over at the Kentucky Economopolis YouTube channel. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Good luck, Ravens. Anybody but the Cowboys, for the love of God. Hope your fantasy teams make the playoffs. Come check us out. Quick Snaps, the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We just did a marathon, gigantic one that was ridiculous and indulgent and fun. Most of them are about 45 minutes, and we put them out late Monday night. So thanks for watching, everybody. Take it easy. Come join us at All Pro Lines, and we'll see you back here in this space next week at 9, Tuesday night. Okay, bye.